C.R.P.H.A. This video is going to be directly on a number of things, but starting with the fact that I know many of you don't realize this, or even are aware of this. Maybe there are some that are, maybe there are more that aren't. When you order from a Safeway, Walmart, maybe a number of others, right? Of the big chains, right? You only get things out of the warehouse, which is moderate to small portions. You'd think that you would get the same amount of things, the same number of things, even in the packages, that you yourself would normally get by going into their stores. But that's not the case. You would need to literally, and this is not always an option for many people, not always, either get your friendly neighborhood taxi service to do it for you, which is not always an option for many, if not all, every person in the country, or get a family friend or a friend to do it for you, or somebody in your family, if an adult, because you may have to be home to take care of your sick child, or the child that was sent home for various numbers of reasons. But the one thing is, you could do this. This is one of many things that people do, even when it comes to political issues and situations and matters. And that is put out a petition. It would have to be over 70,000, well over 70,000, if not 90,000 signatures. Not only in your community, but other communities around yours. Then do not fax it, do not send it, but hand it to your stores, your local stores top head executives. But even that may take some time to do because they would have to consider various things, for various different reasons, and one of which, would this benefit the company when it comes to our customer base? Would this benefit even for our future when the customer base lessens? Right now they could have it where it's moderate to a lot, right? But they need to also consider what happens if it shortens it, or if the online order aspects, especially outside the foot traffic inside their stores, lessens. But also by doing that, they would have to consider the more of the options that they give the online shopper. That could easily drastically mean that the foot traffic inside their stores could be financially harmful to their bottom line. And I know many people think the bottom line thing is a bad thing. But picture this: if you were to run the company and it's hugely successful, you yourself would eventually know that you would have to consider the bottom line financially, in order to keep your company from being bought out or completely going belly up. or completely bankrupt while you even have to borrow from the bank or your stockholders in order to keep the company from going completely under. So those are those among others are many reasons of what they'd have to consider. So essentially, it's like you put say 90,000 signatures, bring it to the top execs of your local district office of that company. They share the information of the petition and how they got and all this other stuff to the main location, headquarters. Then they have to collaborate. That may take a number of years. I'm not going to say how many years, or it could even take a number of months. Who's to say? Or they could be taking only a certain length of time and only offer it for various states, the various cities, and various counties, and various towns. But the one thing is, in order to have it go across the whole entire country of the U.S. of A. to start with, is to encourage people to do the same thing that you are planning to do, in the sense of the petition. Now, the one thing is, you have till that point in time, if it happens at all, even in our lifetime, that when you order, you get small to moderate portions by ordering online, or they deliver it to your front door. Have a family friend or a family member of an adult go over to do shopping for you by giving them a list, which is not always an option for many, if not all. Or go there yourself. Even though you want to try to get things done in home, and maybe while you're working from home, especially, or have to take care of a child or children due to various reasons, like if they were sent home or weren't able to go to school due to an illness, and even after a physician's appointment and whatever else, right? So the only option you have is the petition. Or outside of that, go to the store yourself. Have have someone watch your sick or suspended child. Or trust that he or she could be left just for a certain number of hours while you do some shopping. That's not always the positive part right there, the last one. At any age. Unless they're like old enough to take care of themselves. Like in their late teens, early 20s, legally. What would you do? But like I said, remember, if you were running the company that became a large, huge success, you yourself would have to, like I said, you yourself would have to um, pay attention to the bottom line, even in the future aspect of things. Nobody knows what the future may hold or bring, granted, but there's ways of where you can kind of calculate, okay, if we did this, along the time, even if our foot traffic in various of our stores lessens, we'll still be able to support it by financial backing, but it would have to be more than substantial. So none of the locations have to close for any reason, or even relocate to get to possibly build up more revenue. Each store supports one another in a different way, even though one number of stores in one part of your county may have one district, the other one, same thing, right? But the basic fact is, altogether, the whole aspect, they support one another. But they don't let you know that full aspect. They think that if you don't shop at their store, in their location, it could hurt the company. But basically, if you shop at the same store, different location, it doesn't really hurt the company though. It may hurt them in that location to a point, but it doesn't hurt the company because the more people shop at either locations, they're able to help support the other one. So if you want the same a number of things that you would get by actually shopping yourself to be delivered, you would have to put a petition and bring it directly face to face to the top execs of the company, be that in district form, or if you're lucky enough to go to the main corporate. There are corporate stores and or corporate locales, but the office base of corporate is the meaning that I'm saying. Now, on another fact is that okay, like there's been a number of sayings that Circuit City is gonna make a comeback. The way they may do it by doing kiosks at various locations. There was one years ago I saw that said that they may open stores like the size of Radio Shack was, the former Radio Shack, I should say. But the basic fact is that hasn't even come into existence. But of course, the current one I heard not too long ago was that they'd start with a website, they'd reinitialize the website, then do kiosk eventually, see how well they do on both, or one first, then the other, then kind of build up from there. Toys R Us was said to make a comeback, or was thought to make a comeback essentially. And part of the reason is because they did not auction off all of their items that they had in each and every one of their hundreds of stores. Along with that, though, is that Amazon was said to open stores in the old buildings of Toys R Us stores. None of that has happened yet. Here's another one. Amazon is, I was informed, I think it was yesterday, that Amazon is planning to go into the grocery market industry. Now that's a bit more than, shall we say, premature, more than premature, because we've got already Safeway, we've got Whole Foods, we've got um, Walmart. Let's see, Safeway, Walmart, Whole Foods, Bel Air, Rayleigh's, um, Albertsons in various states. Um, Not so much Lucky's anymore. Nob Hill in various states again, in cities and counties. So Amazon is making something more than way too premature and not really logically thought out. You could say the same thing about when they said they were going to open stores in the old Toys R Us buildings. That was premature and not really well thought out. Now, along with that, Sears is saying it's saying that Sears is going to be doing something different in the sense of making it to where their stores are a bit, if not completely, smaller than the larger stores that you see in the malls, to name a few, or at least to name one, really, in that sense. Logically, the person that is the president or CEO of Sears Kmart, of the Sears Roebuck company, he doesn't know retail worth a damn. He's the reason why Sears has gone completely to almost the full extent of non-existent. Same thing with Kmart. And yet Kmart's being pulled in because Kmart a number of years ago, before they merged with Sears, well, they were doing good until Walmart made a huge comeback and a huge entry into the western and central markets. Before Walmart made that huge entry, Kmart was flourishing. Kmart was basically having a fair, moderate competition between Target and various others, besides namely Sears, in some very small respect. Then when Walmart made the um, the surprising entry to the central and western markets, Kmart started suffering, struggling. Then eventually Kmart had to sell their rights to NASCAR. Then eventually Kmart even struggled even more, even after their revamping, which partially looked like the aspect of Target to an extent. And part of it is by renaming their stores Big K, the Big K, or the Big Kmart. Bad move there. But then even then they still started struggling even more extensively without notice even to the general public. Then when they merged, when they merged with Sears, Sears was doing okay to a point. They themselves were kind of struggling, but with with the with the money transferring between the two retailers, now they're struggling even and Kmart's being pulled alongside, along with. They've closed more Kmart stores that were left, even after a number of stores were closed by Kmart themselves before the merger. So, to the person that's currently in the seat of CEO or president of Sears Kmart, if you need to know how to run and operate a retailer, ask yours truly. I know the way to do things that you are obviously more than unaware and more than clueless of, ain't even about. You may seem to be the trusted CEO or president of Sears Kmart, but guess what, dude? You're not doing anything positive for the company, and eventually it's going to turn into a Mervyn's. Which basically, here's one part that you need to learn. Many of other people may not realize. Mervyn's was started by a gentleman in the 1940s, the mid to late 40s. He only started with one store, one location. He then was able to grow the company by opening other locations, in other stores, in other locations, that is. And with that, though, he eventually sold it over to Dayton Hudson Corporation, the one now known as the Target Corporation. Of course, while a number of people worked for Target, they they were essentially informed that Mervyn's and Target are both sister stores to one another, due to the fact that Mervyn's was essentially part of Dayton Hudson. And of course, before that, before even Target, Dayton Hudson had their own stores known as Dayton and Hudson. They were department stores just like Sears and Macy's and J.C. Penney's and various others. Target it came around 62, 1962, and they didn't need any backing from the retailers of Dayton Hudson, but the corporate office of Dayton Hudson gradually grew that with the separate execs that were still working within the office of Dayton Hudson to grow Target by leasing and building and buying various locations of stores as the company grew, that is. And a number of stores that were essentially known as Gemco stores. Was flourishing in 1956, the late 50s, early 60s, through the 1970s and a moderate portion of the 80s. Somewhere in between, a number of their employees were stealing from them. TV stereos from going right through the back rooms and whatnot, which basically hurt the company. And eventually, Gemco went belly up, and lo and behold, Target took over the buildings. And years before that, many years before that, there was a store known as it was also a 5 and dime, just like Woolworths, known as TGNY. that company went through some changes. It went from TG&Y at first, then Newberry, then back to TG&Y. Both changes were way, way more than premature. They should have stayed with one, bigger, bigger than it was, and made sure that they were financially stable, even the first time, before they changed the name. Then they would have easily made it to where they're able to have Newberry stores in various locations and TG&Y stores in others. But they didn't do that. Therefore, eventually TG&Y became non-existent. TG&Y had a store in my hometown, such as Thrifty's had a store in my hometown. Thrifty's essentially merged with Payless eventually. Then Payless made a stupid move by putting stores in the Hawaiian Island market, just to compete even with the stores of Wong's in that market, as they were doing in the Western States market, Western, United States market, essentially, within the states, as many people would call it. Payless soon found that they had to pull out of either the states market of retail and remain in the Hawaiian Islands, or completely pull out of the Hawaiian Island market and try to stabilize in the United States market of the states market bracket. They were, okay, let's this way, right? Say these two fingers are Payless. Payless was like this. At this, by the time they were, and before they even went into to the Hawaiian Island market, they were like this. Then when they were in there, then they started going up this way. Then when they were pulling out, it kind of leveled out a bit. But over time, when they started spending more money, then it started going like this. But when it went like this, they had to sell the company. Lo and behold, Rite Aid came into the picture. Rite Aid took over every one of the stores except for a certain number, a certain moderate to small number. Now, Rite Aid is still currently struggling. Walgreens bought a certain number of stores in the east to Central Coast of Rite Aid, after the fact that the son of the founder, or one of the founders, did not know shit of retail. Much like the person that's operating and president or CEO of Sears Kmart doesn't know shit about retail. So they're pretty much in the same boat, but in a different aspect and in a different manner. Two different variations of retailers are struggling because of their bad management skills. They don't know shit from a hole in a wall, and they don't even see that. They think that they're doing everything right. They don't know shit at all. Guaranteed. If they want to know of how to do things properly without losing the company to other companies, or losing the company to where there's hundreds of millions of unemployed employees, where the unemployment line in this country would grow even extensively more than longer than it is already, doesn't matter the state either, then they should ask me. They should come to me and talk to me, and then I would be able to help them. Because I know business a lot better than most. And I'm not gloating or nothing, or I'm not trying to gloat if it does seem like I'm gloating, but I'm being honest. No. But the one sad news is the founder of Toys R Us, before the complete closure of a large number of their stores, he passed away. But whoever, the ones that succeeded him, decided to close a large number of stores for various reasons, due to maybe the tough competition with Amazon in the toy department, in the toy sales, and possibly video game sales as well. But but they could have easily asked me too. Toys R Us was known to be one of the top rated toy company retailers in the U.S. The founder started it by doing a what you'd call a baby store of sorts, with selling cribs and baby clothing, what have you. Also, small children, young, really extremely young children type of items. Then he thought, okay. Then he found that he would possibly get more of a profit and revenue with getting age appropriate toys for even for the time. He then went in gradually. He didn't go into it in a full extent. Granted, that's not because that wouldn't be the smart thing if he did that, right? Toys R Us wouldn't be what it was. But before Toys R Us, he gradually did that. When he gradually got a small assortment of toys from different toy makers, age appropriate, mind you, that would essentially tie in and collaborate with what he was already selling at that point in time in the children's store of baby furniture and all that. Then eventually he went full into to the toy business and opened Toys R Us. Then eventually that expanded to a worldwide, practically a world of a retailer. But now even the kids of today aren't able to experience the various things that we as children were able to. Even with the comeback, there hasn't been any actual footprint, if you will, in the business sense, to show any actuality of even a startup. Lucky's did that even after the buyout of Lucky's by merging with Albertsons, which was a stupid idea. Of course, what was also stupid was many years before that, Lucky's and Alpha Beta were pretty much sister stores, much like Mervyn's and Target were at one point. Lucky's, the company of Lucky's, Alpha Beta, decided to close a number of Alpha Beta stores to where Alpha Beta it became non-existent. That only helped Lucky's only for so long. Lucky's did another premature thing at even an earlier time. If they didn't do that, then they would have been able to stay away from the aspect of the merger of Albertsons. Albertsons started in the back east, granted, and eventually grew into the western market. Albertsons then later became a little bit beyond the 1990s that they became into a aspect of a buyout, takeover retailer. And that's one thing Albertsons has fucked up on. You do not want to be seen as that. You don't even want to go into that aspect. Does Albertsons realize that or even care about that? No. That's why, one, they're merged with Safeway. They have a large piece of the pie with Safeway. But they had an even larger piece of the pie eventually when Lucky's pulled out, gave in, and sold it the rest of the portions of their revenue to Albertsons, which basically made it Lucky's go completely gone, non-existent. They're hoping that Safeway does the same thing. I'm praying that Safeway doesn't, because Safeway is a childhood memory store of mine. I remember when I was younger, very young in fact, that my mother and her mother, being my grandmother, would shop together at that store. In fact, my mother shopped and worked at that store during the 1978 strike in my hometown. This was years before Safeway opened another store on the now known New First Avenue. The original First Avenue store is where my mother worked at many, many years ago. Several years ago, actually. So Albertsons has to either pull out of Safeway and stay as their own separate entity, like many others are, or completely get out of the market and name Albertsons under a different aspect, not a grocer, as the as sometimes the preferred term is mentioned more often than not at times. Long's was the only strongest retailer, even in the pharmacy retail aspect. When Rite Aid, Payless, and Walgreens were struggling, they were staying strong. Even when there was a moderate to almost extensive aspect of what was known as the recession, even for the 1990s and 80s, or generally the 1990s, essentially, right? But they stayed strong. Tom and Joe Long started that company in 1938 due to the thankful aspects of Joe M. Long's father-in-law, known as M.B. Skaggs. M.B. Skaggs was a family member of entrepreneurs, known as the Skaggs family. They opened stores like Payless, Skaggs Payless, Skaggs Alpha Beta, Skaggs Safeway, which eventually became just Safeway, Alpha Beta, Payless drugstore. Then one of them changed their Payless store or stores to a Jewel Osco or just general Osco drugs, which many of you will possibly see within Utah and Arizona and various other states beyond that. Longs eventually pulled out of Arizona and sold their store's buildings to Osco and stayed within the a complete western market of Nevada, California, Nevada, Oregon, Colorado, to start with, in the Hawaiian Islands, especially because Tom and Joe Long, the brothers, and founders of Long's, put started putting stores in the Hawaiian Island market starting from 1950. But before that, many years before that, the M.B. Skaggs, the father-in-law of Joe M. Long, which was the father of his wife, um, essentially did a deal, made a deal with the two brothers in selling them the one location on 40th and Piedmont, in which became Long's self-service drugstore in 1938 on May 12th. That grew the company gradually by when they opened a second store before the end of the 30s, known as Long's. It looked like a soda fountain store by the design aspects, mostly due to the awnings or the awning of that store in Alameda. Then, as the store gradually grew, it became more of a success. But here's the one thing, though. Joe and Tom grew up in a retail family, starting from their grandfather, who owned a general store. Therefore, their father inherited the store. Then, eventually, they inherited the store from their father. When it went belly up, though, eventually, that was a positive educational learning lesson for them. It wasn't really a positive thing to happen, but it was a positive thing to where they'd be able to learn what to watch for and what not to do and what to do, even first time. So they were able to acclimate that into their own company. And their own company, they named the first part of the name was of their family's last name, being Longs. Long. I started working for them when I was 16 in '89. Of course, only one brother was alive at the time. The older brother passed away at some point, even after the 50th anniversary celebration. I was in high school, and I collected a number of their 50th anniversary books when my mother worked for them. And the more I read the books front and back, it became more than intriguing, more than fascinating, and it became more intriguing and fascinating, just like this book is currently. And yet, I'm still in the beginning parts of this book, but the more I read it front and back, the more you learn new things, right? So, I use that aspect of what I knew about the company into what I did for the company, starting with from card attending. Then I went to another store after a while. After having to stop working for long because of my schooling, um, while I'm in high school, and then I went to the Sunnyvale store, the Cal Center store. Then eventually I went over to the University Avenue store, which was then at one point, before Long's put a store in there. It was once a Woolworths 5 and dime store. But then when Long's got in there about 2001, I started working for that location as a cashier, part-time cashier, and then eventually they moved me up to a full-time cashier. The manager knew my knowledge of the company and my experience with the company and everything else that I told him essentially. He trusted me enough to where he put me as head cashier. And I used the knowledge of the company and both historical and present at the time to start with, and what I felt the founders would have wanted me to do. Even after the second brother, being the youngest brother, passed away. Even before then, before I started working, and basically, I've gotten more into the aspect of business knowledge ever since then, and it started from before I worked for Longs and during, while I was in high school and after I graduated. So generally, I can tell you that those people who I mentioned, the CEO and president of Sears Kmart, the people of Circuit City, and the current people of Circuit City, which are not the original people who started the company in the beginning, but the ones that bought the company during its decline, during Circuit City's decline, and those who want to have Toys R Us come back, come talk to me. I know the ways to make a company big again, a major success. Those who want Mervin's to come back, because Mervin's was started in 1940s by one person. That one person was eventually able to grow it to a chain of stores, but then he decided to sell it to Dayton Hudson, which was again due to the fact of that Target came in maybe a bit before or a bit after, where Mervin's and Target were known as sister stores eventually. Then, of course, the ownership of Mervin's was passed on to various different companies and what have you. That didn't really help them, did it? This was behind the scenes as each store was pulling in revenue. That sort of thing happened. The change of ownership. The founder, which was a senior citizen at the time, he said if he knew that what happened to Mervin's, which was a major decline to the point to where Mervin's was more than struggling to the point of being more than non-existent, he wouldn't have done. He would have kept it. He would not have sold it the way as soon as he did back in the day of when he did it essentially. He could have easily had it inherited within the family that were interested in wanting to make it even more of a success as he wanted it to be, which would have helped the family as well, and which would have helped the general public and the communities that each store served in the sense of employment, jobs. There'd be there'd be there'd be a more than a moderate aspect of jobs even at this point currently. But like I said, I can help. I'm not saying I'm Einstein or nothing. I'm not gloating the fact that I know anything, even though it may seem like I am, but I'm not. But the basic fact is, I know ways to do things that nobody's even aware of. So, with that, if you want to know more information, please let me know on the bottom of the video screen here, and I can inform you as much as I can on whatever question you may have, even if you want to talk with me on Facebook via my C.R.P.H.A. Humanitarian Advocate page or the Citizen Advocate page of C.R.P.H.A. Please let me know. This is C.R.P.H.A. Humanitarian Advocate. Please stay safe and stay in school for those of our youth. And if you, like I said, there's always a possibility of everything positive for happening for everybody as long as it doesn't affect you or anybody else in the world. Have a good day.